All right. So 2020 was an interesting year. For some, it was up, for some, it was down. And I think there's lessons in both. And so to talk about those lessons in both, I'm excited to have someone on who I met as a co-panelist at a presentation about selling on Amazon in Mexico. He actually is in Mexico, and he's got quite a bit of experience in the e-commerce / retail world, which I think will make for an interesting conversation that we can all learn from. So excited to have Mike Begg here with me. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Kevin, thank you for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again. It was so pleasurable on the last presentation with Payoneer. So hopefully we can make another good presentation here.
Yeah, exactly. So you and I were, it was about a month ago. Time flies when you're having fun. We were co-panelists, so to speak. Basically, Payoneer, the payment service provider, has like their global expansion series. They talk about how you can expand into marketplaces. I spoke about Canada. You spoke about Mexico. I was taking notes because I know very little about Mexico. I have really just dabbled in Mexico. I've had one sale so far in Mexico because I turned on NARF, the North American Remote Fulfillment Program. But so I'm definitely not the one to be talking about Mexico. But you've got an interesting background here. So tell us how you got into the world of retail and e-commerce.
Yeah, so it's kind of been an interesting long journey. I graduated college, went and worked in consulting for Deloitte. Really didn't enjoy that. So I left and went into retail real estate development, working for Sears, which was an experience of its own. Working at one of the largest retailers in the US while it was failing definitely gave me a lot of insights into what was happening in the broader retail space. And it kind of opened up my eyes to what was going on in e-commerce. So after being at Sears for about 2 years, I ended up kind of venturing into e-commerce with two of my partners. We were trying to figure out exactly what to do to get started. We started selling ebooks and then doing retail arbitrage, and then eventually importing products from China and private labeling them and selling them on the Amazon platform. So all of that experience led to us figuring out what works to be successful on the Amazon platform. And then we kind of leveraged that knowledge to help other brands be successful on the Amazon platform to where we are today with our agency, AMZ Advisors.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's unpack some of that. So you had gone to work for Sears and then you went into e-commerce, helping people on Amazon. So you want to talk about two different trajectory paths of where the industries are heading. I remember taking in high school this is a long time ago, a like introduction to business class, and my teacher using the example of how a company like Sears is so big that they don't even care if they lose a customer or two because they've got so many customers. Now, maybe that was prophetic the wrong direction, but Sears, like you were working there at a time that Sears was not in the upswing, right?
Yeah, it was not good. When I started at Sears, we were kind of desperate to raise money. And the first project that I was working on the real estate side was building a real estate investment trust, which is called Seritage, and it's still a publicly traded company. And what we did was we figured out we had to go through the entire Sears portfolio, value all the properties, see which ones had the best opportunities for redevelopment, which ones would be the most valuable if we redevelop them, and then package that all together with a bunch of crap stores that we weren't going to be able to do anything with, and sold it off for $2.2 billion. So,
oh, wow.
$2.2 billion was a lot of cash coming into the company, but the reality is that if you don't have, the cash can help deal with the operational side, but if you're still burning through cash and not generating enough sales on the retail side, it's going to continue to be an issue. And this was just kind of a stopgap at that point to help the company keep going. But the reality was there wasn't enough being done on the retail and e-commerce side to really help the company make that transition and go in a new direction from just selling in stores. And there's a lot of different problems that we could talk about there. But that's kind of, the general idea of what was going on when I got into Sears, excuse me.
Okay. Gotcha. So to use Stephen Covey's analogy from Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, I think it was that it's like stacking deck chairs on the Titanic and laying them up. It sounds like that's what was happening with, getting more money coming into the company. It's like, it's just it's already hit the iceberg and it's going. So you left
Yeah.
Sears, which I'm sorry to say this, but it sounds like we can make this into a whole other, conversation just about the history and evolution of Sears, which I'm actually kind of fascinated by, because when I first got into Amazon in 2015, people were talking about like Sears, like it was like another alternate channel. It was like, Amazon, eBay, and then like, Sears, like you can go on Sears.com and sell there. It could be like the next big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, because when we think about it, 2014, 15 is really when I started getting into e-commerce as well. And that's when I was at Sears. So, we made so part of that cash that we were raising and a lot of the investment within the company was going into the e-commerce side. But the general problem when we think about Sears as a retailer is that the demographics of their customer were typically older. So, we're looking at people that are 40s, 50s, 60s, or older that are shopping at Sears. And now we're trying to get them to adopt a new way of shopping.
Right.
When many of them maybe don't even have access to computers, don't have access to the internet. They're not used to using them. They're not as familiar with it. Maybe they didn't grow up with it. So we were investing a lot into e-commerce, but we didn't really have the customers to really generate the return on investment. This is kind of a broader problem of not, reinventing yourself over time. Instead of, if we look back, one of the big things that caused Sears a lot of issues was actually the Kmart acquisition in 2005, I think it was. So
okay.
Instead of spending all that money on Kmart, that money could have been invested into the tech side and developing the e-commerce space. And, they probably would still be a leader in e-commerce if they had done that. Instead of investing into Kmart, which was a failing retail store, they had just been bought out of bankruptcy. They had failing sales. The idea that could be turned around was kind of misplaced. When really, being able to innovate, see what's coming next, and changing to e-commerce would have been the right step for them. So, it's easy to look back and figure out what was going wrong, but it's obviously harder to make those decisions when you're in the moment.
Yeah, hindsight is definitely 2020. And it can be easy to pick apart the Sears leadership. They should have done this, they should have done that. But things evolve and change. And so, but kind of going more towards, I think what people are more interested in that are listening to this is the evolution of e-commerce and Amazon and whatnot. So you had gotten into the e-commerce world. So tell me a little bit about how you kind of made the transition from, employee at Sears to now getting into the e-commerce space.
Yeah. So I think what was interesting for me was, while I was working there, I obviously saw things going down. It kind of made me question how safe some jobs are. And then it made me realize that, a lot of business owners are doing the best they can. They're making the best decisions they can. The Sears leadership was making the best decisions that they had access to at the time. And then I realized myself, like, maybe I can make better decisions for myself. And that's kind of what started my thoughts of getting into entrepreneurship, but I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't grow up as an entrepreneur. I wasn't out there. I'm from Connecticut. I wasn't out there shoveling driveways and selling lemonade on the corner during the summer. I just didn't know what to do. So I started by selling Kindle ebooks on the Amazon platform, which, I was hiring ghostwriters. They were writing the books for me, graphic designer to put the label together, put it on there, sell it, make some money on the royalties. I thought, all right, let me at least start bringing some money in, and then I'll start, figuring out more things. That was the first step. After Kindle, we kind of learned about, when I say we, myself and my two partners, we learned about the other opportunities to sell within the Amazon space. So, the FBA program was something that was newer at the time. It had been out there, but, it's something that wasn't as broadly talked about as it is today. So we started looking at that more, and we started learning about retail arbitrage. So we went to, I think, every Walmart and Target in the tri-state area, buying up everything on clearance, going to Amazon, selling it. And I remember the first product we sold was an internet router that we bought for like $20, was selling for like 80 on Amazon. So we were like, oh, this is awesome. This is great. We got to keep doing this. And then it just kept evolving. We learned about private labels. And then, we started taking the money that we were making from the retail arbitrage side and started investing it in buying inventory, building a brand, buying inventory from China, getting the products over.
Mm-hmm.
And we started building two different brands. One brand went really well. One brand, just kind of did okay. And yeah, I mean, that was our exposure to it. And we realized that we were competing against a lot of, big multinational, billion-dollar companies, and we were beating them in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the product ranking pages and selling more than them. And we were like, all right, well, maybe we have something that we can turn into a process here, and help other people. So that was the entire cycle of how we got into where we are right now. It was definitely a learning experience along the way. We learned a lot from failing with our own brands and losing money on our own brands. And obviously we were able to apply a lot of those lessons to our clients that really didn't know what they were doing on the Amazon space from the start to help them avoid a lot of those pitfalls. And then from there, it's just constantly, learning and changing and trying to improve things from there.
Yeah, what's interesting there, and I just caught on to something you mentioned about how you're beating these big brands and whatnot, and it kind of takes me back to what you were talking about with Sears, and also I think back to my own experience in the Fortune 500 world. Like when you work for some of these big companies, like you're so used to like the rest of the world bends to your will.
Yeah.
Maybe not your will, but at least the culture of the company. And it's hard to break out of the box of the culture of the company. And so if, the way we list products in the catalog is a certain way, then that's just the way it is. So they're not adapting it necessarily to Amazon and what works on Amazon, which might be different than, what works in the Sears store, for example. So you've been helping companies with this. I'm just going to throw this out there because you had said it publicly, but you guys have done, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere near $500,000 of sales that not you, but like you've overseen with these brands that you've been helping.
Yeah, we've helped our clients do about $500 million in sales on the Amazon platform since we started. Over $100 million in ad spend on the Amazon platform as well. So we've been doing this for a long time. I mean, we've worked with a lot of big companies, and I think the point you made right there about a lot of big companies have structure. They're rigid. They're used to doing things a certain way. There's people that want to have control and input over certain things of it, and that's just not the way that it works on the Amazon platform. You need to do things for that specific platform. And I mean, not just Amazon, any platform. If you're not doing something that's right for that platform, it's not going to make sense. And that's really where we try to help a lot of our clients understand that. And it's tough. I mean, we literally just got on a phone call with one of our newer clients who's, they're again, $1 billion company. And same exact problem, we get on the call. This is actually a funny story. We start having, we start the conversation like, all right, guys, so like, let's talk about this. Someone jumps in, whoa, what's this? I don't even know what this is. No one told me about this. We have to do this again. End call. So like the problem with a lot of big companies is that somebody wants to have control over what it is, no matter what. And that can lead to a lot of things slowing down. But at the same time, that leads to a lot of opportunities for smaller companies that are more flexible, that are able to make decisions quicker and can actually implement strategies and plans faster on the Amazon platform. So that just highlights one example of the advantages of being a small company versus a big company on Amazon. But really anyone that's just flexible, no matter what the size, and willing to try new things on the platform are going to be the ones that succeed the most.
Yeah. And I think another kind of keep on this takeaway for people that have never worked for a large company and a big company, there's this constant fear of criticism. And fear of criticism of your boss and your boss looking bad to their boss and just up the chain of command. And so it ends up that like, well, no one told me that. And it's like, because it's this, there's no real incentive for risk for most people that work for a large company. It's if things go really well, instead of a 3% raise, you get a 4% raise that year. If things go bad, you lose your job. Yeah. So it's like, the risk levels aren't there. And so sometimes like the little things like, how to write a listing, if there's the perceived, this might be risky and I might look bad to my boss if it goes bad, even if like in reality, it's not even really a risk. It's just there. So it's some way that you as a smaller seller, even a smaller seller is like, someone that maybe is doing, 8 figures instead of, multiple billions.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I mean, when we look at big corporations, most of them don't have that entrepreneur mindset where they actually enable their employees to go out there, figure out new things and learn things. I mean, when I was at Sears, it was the same concept. I mean, my developments, my plans, my projects were going to my boss, and then they were going to the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So if the CEO found a mistake or found an error or something, my boss was going to hear about it directly. I was going to hear about it directly. You know, that's just the way it is. And you're right. Criticism is a big problem, and it prevents a lot of things from, moving forward. But yeah, again, being a small business, being nimble, allowing your employees, if you have them, to actually lead a project or, assume more risks or try new things. I mean, it's really not a risk, like you said. If you're trying a new listing copy or a new advertising campaign, yeah, you might take a loss in the short term, but you're going to learn from that. So I think that's definitely a different mindset. And I think a lot more e-commerce brands and entrepreneurs have that mindset than a lot of people that come from, traditional corporate space.
Right. Exactly. So, we're not so worried about someone's going to make a comment. And that is literally a fear everyone in the corporate world has, is the comment. And if you've not worked in the big corporate space, this might not make any sense, but we have that ability to make decisions up and down. And 2020 had proven to us sometimes the way things were working before is not the way they're going to be working in the future. And so one of the things, we were talking offline was, some of your clients have had big jumps in sales and some have gone down. So what are you seeing in the reaction that people should be taking for, in the past, maybe that they learned in 2020, and how do we apply that into the future?
Yeah, so I think we saw a lot of different things in 2020. I mean, I think initially when this whole pandemic broke out, I think there was a lot of overreaction. So a lot of companies cut way back on costs, way back on expenses, not knowing what was going to happen. And then that contraction actually prevented them from growing on the platform. That's one thing. Obviously, another big issue that we saw last year was the FBA program limiting the amount of inventory that you can send into the platform or prioritizing PPE equipment. That had a big hit on a lot of our clients that were relying on FBA to get that visibility, to have that Prime badge, to increase the conversion rates. So without that definitely created a lot of challenges for companies that weren't within the PPE space or really weren't doing a high volume of sales to begin with. And, that's just the reality of it. I mean, a lot of clients suffered because of that. And I think one of the big lessons that comes out of that is having flexibility and having options for actually fulfilling your product outside of FBA. And one of the recommendations we've been making a lot to our clients since, probably third quarter last year is looking at 3PL partners that can help you do seller fulfilled Prime if you need it. So, we always recommend setting up our clients with, if they're doing FBA, an FBA listing and an FBM listing, but by leveraging seller fulfilled Prime, we have that Prime badge no matter what. It doesn't matter whether we run out of inventory on FBA. It doesn't matter if our inventory is being fulfilled by FBM. The end customer doesn't see the difference because that Prime badge is still there. They still know they're going to get their product in 2 days. So that's one way that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned out of 2020. And then obviously advertising is the other one. More and more big brands, a lot of these big corporations now are pumping more and more advertising dollars into the Amazon platform. And I think the CPCs, the ACoS, and the ROAS have all changed on Amazon over the last year because of that. And, you need to be more competitive as a small business advertising on the platform if you actually want to steal some of that market share and, keep your products ranked on page one. Otherwise you're just going to be forfeiting pretty much that organic space to a lot of these bigger companies that are going to, have these massive advertising dollars and come in with DSP or, just more aggressive advertising campaigns on Campaign Manager. So I think that's another lesson is that we're going to have to expect more costly advertising going forward to actually be on the Amazon platform.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point, is that, once these big companies start coming in and spending more money on Amazon, it makes all the ads start to go up a little bit more. So it's not one of those things that like you pull away. It's just, you got to have a different strategy. So like when I first got into it, the thought process was you start with an auto campaign, and then you have a broad based campaign or broad match campaign. And then you just keep doing keyword research. And then if it gets 8 clicks and no sales, you make it negative. And it was like all these like strategies, which I've come to believe all of those don't work anymore, because Amazon's also gotten more aggressive with creating more placements. So, kind of like Google has their, I forget what they call it. It's like their broad is much more broad than Amazon's broad. They take a lot more liberty in people's intent, and Amazon's kind of starting to go that direction a little bit, it seems like.
Yeah.
So tell me, in the $100 million of ad spend that you've overseen, where do you see as the kind of best philosophy, strategy, or tactic, whatever the word is here, for being as profitable as possible with sponsored ads?
Yeah, profitability is always a tough question. I mean, I think we get this all the time, and the recommendations that we always make to our clients is that on the advertising side, you're not going to make that much money. It's just the reality of it. The goal, I think, there should be to hit break even. So, running at a higher A cost, hitting break even on the advertising side, and then trying to use that break even to maximize your organic visibility on the search engine, on the SERP pages on the Amazon platform. So by being higher up on page 1, because you're spending more money on the advertising side, you're going to generate more organic sales, or at least, that's the goal behind that type of approach. I think when it comes to, specific strategies, when you're implementing that, I mean, you need to do a lot of testing for your account. I mean, I think in our experience, there's about, I don't know, maybe 100 different advertising strategies you can try to get your sales going. And the approach you initially, said works in some accounts, in some categories. Other categories, you need to be more aggressive. So, focusing more on high click-through rate keywords, or, one category that's very expensive is supplements. You're looking at sometimes $15 to $20 per click, which is insane. Wow. So how do you compete with that? Well, you need to go after longer tail keywords in that instance. So as the CPCs and the cost of the advertising continues to increase over time, we need to invent new strategies and find new ways to drive traffic to your listings. And a lot of that may even be from off platform. So, one way that we've kind of approached this with some clients now is that if the CPCs are getting too high within Amazon, are there other platforms that we can find traffic from that is, much less expensive? I mean, one example of this is Pinterest. We have one client that sells women's products. Pinterest audience is 80% women. Putting ads on Pinterest makes a ton of sense, because we're getting the ads in front of the people that are, probably going to buy these products, and the CPCs are incredibly cheap. So there's always different strategies you need to approach it from. And, there's not one size that fits all. And I think that's what a lot of people approach it as. You really need to just test what works for your brand, see where the costs are, see where your financial results are leading you, and then optimize for whatever outcome you're trying to get.
Okay, interesting. So with Pinterest, are you running the traffic straight to Amazon? Are you running them to a landing page in between?
It depends on the client. Most of the time, we're just running it straight, because I mean, CPCs are like 10 cents. So I mean, for the same cost of what we're going to spend for one click on Amazon, we're going to get it for very cheap on Pinterest. Alternatively, a lot of clients that we're managing their off-platform presence as well. So we're managing their Shopify store or whatever it may be. We're using a landing page on the Shopify store to actually get that first purchase, and then we're trying to, because now we own that customer and we own that customer's information, and then later we may try to push them to the Amazon platform. So it really depends on what the client's looking for and what we're doing within the company's business, within the client's business. But yeah, I mean, either approach is a great way to generate sales. I mean, you can't continuously be reliant on the Amazon platform forever as an Amazon brand. You need to eventually build your own brand and, take that into consideration and have your own customer data that you control, and, be able to leverage that for growing on other platforms, for just continuing to sell, beyond the point where Amazon gets too competitive. So always having a backup plan, I think, is extremely important to keep in mind when you're trying these new advertising strategies.
Well, that's interesting with the Pinterest one. You got my mind really thinking about that. Because if you have something that's visual, that, I mean, it doesn't even have to necessarily be women. Because, you know, if 20% of Pinterest users are men, that's still a lot of people when you break it down. And, you know, they're looking at visual pictures. So if you have something that works visually, I could see how that would work. Now, are you pixeling? I don't know if this is something that it would be against Pinterest terms of service, but are you pixeling these people on the way to Amazon, or just straight, here's the link to Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. We do that. I'm not going to say we don't. We just use a redirect link to get that pixel. But obviously, the challenge with sending people to Amazon is that we can't actually tell what converts, because we're not allowed to actually see the end purchase. So we can retarget people that have clicked through the link to Amazon, but the value there is not as much as seeing who's actually purchasing the product. So the pixel really comes in value there if we're generating traffic, to the website, and we can see who's actually making the purchase and attribute that to a Pinterest sale. So and then obviously retarget from there using social media and other platforms. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the way we use pixeling with Pinterest.
Okay, interesting. So let's just take ourselves into a meeting and with a new client, and it doesn't have to be the one that said, I didn't know this and hung up the phone. Let's just say any new customer comes to you, let's say they're a 7-figure seller and they're trying to get to be an 8-figure seller. What are you going to kind of walk through to help them get to that point?
Sure. So I think the first thing with any client is obviously just understanding their business. If we don't know their business, we don't understand their capabilities, what their priorities are, what their goals are, what their team members, who's supporting them, it makes it a lot more difficult to actually get the results, because now we might be crossing communication lines, things might get lost in translation. So it's a big issue that we see. So really diving into the account and analyzing the data that's there is the starting point, and then presenting the opportunities that we see to them is the first step there. Then from there, obviously, we're looking at where we see the best opportunities to improve the performance by optimizing content is the first step. So, if we're optimizing content for listings that's, just for an example, something that has a high amount of traffic, low conversion rate. Well, maybe we need to change the copy there. Maybe we need to change the imagery to try to improve conversion rates. That's one example if it's something we might try to do. Vice versa, if you have a listing that has a high conversion rate and low traffic, then we're going to try to advertise that one. So it's really understanding and diving into their business and figuring out where the biggest opportunities are, and seeing what's going on in the marketplace as well. And again, it's tough to give you an exact play-by-play, but diving in, looking at the data, focusing on where we can improve content and improve conversion rates from listings that are already getting traffic, figuring out where we can improve sales from listings that have high conversion rates but low traffic. This might also be a listing copy issue because maybe they're not indexing correctly. And then from there, kind of testing new strategies on the advertising side to get it going. I mean, obviously, that initial phase, if they don't have the keyword data already, is going to be keyword discovery. So there's going to be a lot of auto campaigns, a lot of research going on there. And then it's leveraging that keyword data within the platform to create all of the different manual strategies, product targeting, category targeting, sponsored brand, sponsored display, whatever it may be. And then beyond that is when we start looking at, now we've built out this Amazon funnel. We have the bottom of the funnel protected with sponsored product targeting, sponsored display targeting. We have the middle of the funnel with sponsored display and sponsored products. We have top of the funnel brand awareness with sponsored brands and sponsored products and sponsored display. So now that we've built all of that out, how can we get additional traffic to the website and try to get people to convert? And then we'll start looking at, depending on where their budget is or what the money they have to invest there, whether we're going to look at paid advertising on other platforms, whether we're going to look at, PR, brand awareness campaigns, or SEO link building. There's a lot of different strategies that we can approach it from once we've kind of built that entire Amazon side for them.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's all good stuff. Now, I know I've had this discussion with folks where they ask me questions like, what's a good ACoS? What's a good conversion rate? What's a good amount of traffic? Yeah. How would you answer some of this? Because you did talk about high traffic and high conversion or low conversion. Like, is some of that, it depends on the product? Like, what's your barometer there?
So I think when we're talking about ACOS, again, it comes down to break even. We have some clients that have 40% break even ACOS, which is phenomenal because now we have a lot more room to really, push the advertising and get them to break even. We have other clients where it's 20%. So again, when we're targeting that's the range we might be looking at, and then figuring out how to get to that target to help them break even and maximize their actual organic sales is part of the challenge for us. Now, when we're looking at conversion rates, I think the average conversion rate on Amazon is about 8%. So what we're trying to help our clients do, and again, this depends on the category and depends on how much brand awareness they might have from outside of the platform, is we're trying to get them to about 20%. So if we can get them to 20% conversion rate, that means that 1 out of 5 shoppers coming to the page is going to purchase. So if we're, selling a $20 product, we're paying $1 per click. One of those 5 customers is paying $20. Our break even there, our ACOS there in theory is 25%, and maybe our break even's 40. So, now we've made a 15% on that advertising sale. That's phenomenal. So by optimizing the conversion rates and trying to get those higher, we can actually get a better return for them on the advertising side and bring the tacos down to maximize the actual sales. So when I'm talking about low conversion rates, anything less than 8 is something that we really need to focus on improving. Just because 8's the average or the goal that we set. If you don't have 8 at least, that's a problem. So with those, we need to focus on the content. If we're looking, if you're at that 8 mark or even above, we're looking at, all right, how can we incrementally increase this? Maybe we need to focus the advertising more on certain keywords that are converting better. That's one way to maximize the conversion rates. Another one might be running promotions. Another might be changing the imagery or adding A+ content, or just one thing that a lot of companies don't consider if they have a broad SKU base is actually just keeping their branding consistent across all their product lines. So if your branding is consistent with the customer experience going to other websites or even going in between listings within your catalog, it's going to show the customer that you're, more professional. It shows that you're invested more in the platform. It's probably going to lead to a better shopping experience for them. And that's one thing a lot of brands don't consider. So, if you're not being consistent between your listings, at least with styling, same fonts, same colors, similar types of imagery, similar types of messaging within the listing copy, that's going to be one thing that might actually affect your conversion rates. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and it really is going to take time to kind of test things on your brand. But I think if you're at that 8% mark, there's a lot of room for you to increase and really start getting better results for your account.
Yeah. I mean, because if somebody goes from just 8 to 10%, I mean, that is, if you have the same amount of traffic, that is, by my quick back of the envelope math in my head, that's like a 25% increase in sales.
Yeah. More or less, I think.
Yeah. Something around like that. But because if you have the same traffic and more people just click the add to cart button, and buy it, you're going to get more sales.
And vice versa. You might have an extremely high conversion rate right now. I have some clients that have a 50% conversion rate or a 40% conversion rate. And that could be because you're only advertising on your branded keywords. That's one reason. Another explanation could be that you're literally the only product in the niche that is actually addressing what the customer is looking for. That can lead to a high conversion rate. But again, if the majority of the time is that you're focused on the branded keywords and that's where your advertising traffic's coming from. So if you're at that higher conversion rate, I don't want to say you want to bring the conversion rate down, but you want to increase the traffic that's coming there to see if you can maintain that conversion rate or if you're going to get down to something that's more realistic. Because the reality, most of the time, if you're advertising across non-branded keywords within the Amazon platform, it's going to be very hard to hit 40%. I mean, maybe you'll get 25%, maybe you'll get 30% if your product's phenomenal or if the keywords you're advertising on are not as competitive. But I mean, if you're at that point where your conversion rates are really high, that's a huge opportunity to start driving more traffic to it and then see how your conversion rate actually changes after you start getting more people to your product listing.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. A couple episodes ago, I was talking to somebody and the concept of people that have a 45 to 50% conversion rate came up. And I'm like, it's a problem, but it's a good problem to have. But the problem is not being aggressive enough. I totally agree with you in sending enough traffic, because at the end of the day, when you have to pay bills or pay your suppliers, you don't take your conversion rate to the bank. You take dollars and cents. And so if you're able to get more people there, maybe they convert at a lower rate, but you get more sales because they're just people who they're not quite as targeted. Their intent isn't quite the same as maybe certain keywords. Yeah. But if you're bringing in more sales and you're doing it profitably, that's what really matters ultimately.
Yeah. And I think it's fine if you want to go with that strategy of just focusing on your branded keywords where you're going to get a higher conversion rate. That's fine if you don't have the advertising to be more aggressive. But at the same time, if you're coming, to myself, if you're going to someone like you as well, and you want to grow on the Amazon platform, you're not going to grow on the Amazon platform by advertising more on your branded keywords. You're going to grow on the Amazon platform by being more aggressive on non-branded keywords. So, it's fine if you want to go that route. It's just a different strategy that you need to be using instead of using an expert or an agency or whoever it may be to help you grow on the platform.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people don't quite 100% grasp, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, and very smart person, but she was talking about how, like, with Facebook, if she needs more, clicks or whatever, she just changes images, she changes the copy, and, she gets the result. Because Facebook is just going out and finding people who might be interested. Amazon is less proactive like that and more reactive to what people are actually searching for. So if you don't have a well-known brand, maybe Apple or Samsung people are searching for, but, if you have, a run, I hate to use this phrase, but run-of-the-mill private label brand like most of us do, chances are people aren't going to Amazon and saying, I'm going to go look for XYZ products, because they've never heard of it. They're looking for, mouse, because I'm looking at a mouse on my desk, and they happen to see your mouse that you're selling.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, if you're a smaller brand, it's very difficult. And that's why when we're talking about scaling companies, we focus on the Amazon platform first, because once we control the Amazon sales funnel, now we can focus more on building that brand awareness off platform, or building their own website to start generating some brand loyalty through their website. And that's a whole different conversation. Once you have that funnel built out on Amazon, you can go out there, you can do more advertising that's focused on brand awareness. I think the most recent number I saw is that a customer needs to be in touch with your brand. They need to see an ad. They need to be familiar with the name, hear it, whatever it is, 20 times now before they consider purchasing products. So most small private label brands don't have enough money to go out there and hit the ad space 20 times before they're going to get those branded searches on the Amazon platform. So focusing on the non-branded keywords, building that funnel is the first key. And then from there, you can start looking at and making sure it's all profitable, of course.
Right.
And then from there, you can look at starting to dedicate advertising dollars to other platforms or to brand awareness, and then actually trying to build a much larger brand than something that's Amazon native, for example.
Yeah, all good stuff there. So one other question I have, we're talking a lot about things to grow, but let's talk about when things don't go well. So, I know this has happened to a lot of folks where maybe they were selling travel pillows and there was just gangbusters. They were just printing money. It was, borderline legalized stealing, because it was just, the money was just coming to that. Not actual stealing or anything, but it was going very well. But then all of a sudden that niche is suffering, for lack of a better phrase. So what were some things that you would do to help your clients who were in the suffering, whether they're still suffering, their niche isn't working as well as it used to, or they're trying to figure out how to claw themselves back up?
Yeah, that's a very interesting example, because we have a client that is in the travel space that has suffered significantly. The reality is that this is cyclical.
Right.
Once things, and there's two different things here. Once things go back to normal, once more people are vaccinated, travel will increase, demand for these products will increase. But how do you get through that in the short term? And this is where it gets really difficult. When we're talking about it as from the business perspective, if you're the only employee, that's great, because then you don't have to make a lot of hard decisions. If you have people working for you, you need to start looking at ways to conserve cash. I mean, when we're talking about, surviving and getting through this and waiting for the cycle to come back, It's really about cash flow management and cash flow forecasting and scenario planning. When we were talking about this, I was talking about this in March and April of last year. We don't know how long this is going to be. You need to forecast different scenarios out, figure out how your cash flow is going to last for certain time periods. And one of the things that as a business owner and just being as a human, that's hard to forecast for is your SG&A. So your selling costs, your salespeople, whoever it may be, your administrative costs. We tend to hold on to those costs a lot longer than we need to, mainly because we don't like firing people. It's a very hard conversation. We like to be more optimistic that things are going to come back sooner than they may. And that leads us to wasting a lot of cash in the beginning. So being more aggressive if you need to make those decisions and you're in a category and space where you need to preserve cash right now just to stay afloat is extremely important, and you need to make some hard decisions there. That's one thing. Another thing is just managing your inventory properly. If you have inventory that's just sitting, you need to liquidate that and turn it into cash. Maybe Amazon's not the best place to do that for you once you take out the fees. Maybe you need to find other platforms just to liquidate your inventory. But if you have inventory sitting there, you don't have cash to pay your bills. You don't have cash to just survive as a person. So that's important to turn over inventory that's not moving. And then in line with that, you need to focus on the inventory that is moving. So the way I put it is that you prioritize your core products and you eliminate your non-core products. So we have a lot of clients that are in the travel space, for example, that maybe still have some products selling. I mean, there are still some travel products selling. We don't want to make it sound like it's
right.
Gone, but some products are doing better than others. So we need to get rid of the inventory of the products that aren't moving or that aren't profitable, and then turn that over into cash and reinvest in the products that actually are selling right now. So you actually have more inventory so you don't dry up those sales as well. It's a hard conversation. It's a hard discussion to have with a lot of clients because they've worked hard to launch all these SKUs, to build all these manufacturer relationships for all these products. But at the end of the day, if a product is not contributing enough to your top line sales, it's just going to be dragging you down on the bottom line, and it's going to tie up your cash when you need it most to actually keep going. Again, it's cyclical. Things are going to change. Things are going to come back. Maybe a lot of people that have seasonal products for the summer missed out a lot during the summer as well. That could be another example. But the reality is that you just need to keep surviving, I guess I would say, in the short term to make sure that you're there for once the market picks up, because you're not alone. I mean, if you're in a niche like that, every other company is going through that same problem.
Right.
You can outlast these other companies. The competition is going to be a lot less when that cycle comes back. So preservation, saving yourself and making your money last as long as possible is one of the things that we're trying to help a lot of our clients that are suffering right now on the Amazon platform understand and then implement within their own business.
Yeah. And that's such a good point about the cyclical nature of a lot of things. So like travel, this isn't the first time we'll just keep harping on travel, but travel's had a lot of cycles. And I was just talking to my wife the other day about how someone she knows is a flight attendant, and apparently whatever airline this person flies for, they're starting to fill up their planes. There's not a space in between. It's the full thing now. They just said, oh, we'll just let everybody in, and not everybody's vaccinated and whatever, but people seem to be okay with it. So, people are starting to get out more. So it's not the same as it was in April. And so some of it is just taking a good look at what they're doing. So real quick, I wanted to touch on, because you're in Mexico.
Yes.
And it was interesting was before we started, in a shot glass, which I would have thought was tequila, you had like espresso or something. There you go. Still got a little bit of it there. Yeah. For those watching on YouTube can see you got some, but for those listening who can't see, it's basically a shot glass, a little bit of espresso in it. But you're in Mexico, so you're living Mexico, and you had talked at the Payoneer presentation about going into Mexico. So just briefly, because sometimes people ask me about Mexico, I'm like, I really don't know much about it. So tell me a little bit about Mexico and, what it's like selling there. Is it just Amazon? Do you need to go into some of the other marketplaces there? What would you tell someone that wants to go into Mexico?
So I think there's two things to consider. When we're talking about platforms, Amazon is obviously one of the big platforms, but the major platform in Mexico and in Latin America in general is Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre has FBA or an FBA program. It's not
right.
called
Their
FBA,
version
obviously.
of it.
But it's invitation only. And it's very hard to get an invitation to it. So using Amazon FBA, if you're planning on selling in Mexico, is a great opportunity because now you can use multi-channel fulfillment to actually fulfill orders on Mercado Libre.
Does Mercado Libre have a problem with that?
No, they're,
really?
they're just
that's
trying
interesting.
to generate sales. Yeah, you can use multi-channel fulfillment through that, so it's
okay.
fine.
Because like Walmart hates that apparently.
Yeah, I can imagine. But no, Mercado Libre, it's not as big of a concern right now. So
okay.
I think that's one thing to consider. And then the sales volume obviously isn't as high in Mexico when we're talking about the actual consumer base. I said this on the webinar, but I think about only 15% of the population has access to credit scores. So they have access to credit lines. So the amount of capital within the market is smaller, but the people that do have that money are very interested in foreign brands, much more so than Mexican brands. That's just a cultural thing. They really want to buy foreign products from Europe, from the US, from Canada, wherever it may be. So that's one advantage that you have as a foreign seller selling into the marketplace. I'd say one of the larger disadvantages, though, is understanding the taxes and fees that come into Mexico. There's a lot of different requirements you have. Just when it comes to importing products into Mexico, you need to have an importer of record. Amazon won't be the importer of record, so you need to hire a third party to do that. You can have tariffs on imports. You can have other EVA, value add tax on imports. You have value add tax on sales, which Amazon collects for you and remits, which is nice. But the Mexican SAT, which is the IRS equivalent in the US, actually collects income taxes on sales on the Amazon platform. So if you are a foreign resident, or if you're a foreigner and you don't have a business in Mexico, they're taking 20% off the top for income tax. And that's
the top, not your profits.
Well, off the sales. Yeah. So off your income. Yeah.
So, but they're taking it from Amazon, or you're having to file.
They're taking it directly from Amazon. So whatever your profit is on Amazon, they're just taking 20% right off the top.
How would they know that?
This is what they do.
So they just come up with their own formula to decide, basically.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting.
It's very difficult. But once you have a business here, that rate goes down to about 0.5% to 5%. And if you have another type of business here called persona moral, you just deal with it when you actually have to go pay taxes. So taxes is a big thing that gets a lot of businesses messed up here in Mexico. And, if you're selling as a foreign seller without having a business presence here, that 20% income tax can really hurt your bottom line. So making sure you're just considering that when you're starting to sell in Mexico, setting up a business down here, or figuring out someone who can serve as a persona physica so you can get that lower tax rate is what's going to help you to actually start selling on Mexico and being more successful.
What's the best way to even see if there's really demand? Because I've heard through the grapevine that I don't want to throw any of the brand name tools under the bus, but pick your favorite extension for product research. And I've heard a lot of these are way overstating sales in Mexico. Is that what you've seen, or are there other ways of looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a tough one because I know you're meaning, and we use a variety of different tools just because we want to make sure that the numbers are similar, at least between them. I think just the access to the data isn't there yet when we talk about a lot of these platforms. Many of them are, not to throw them under the bus, they're using your sales data to come up with their actual projections for everything else, and that's where the value is to a lot of other people. FBA is growing here, but it's not as big, so there's a lot less demand. There's a lot less seller data that they're able to pull, and there's a lot less tools that the sellers in Mexico are using. So there's, again, less data for them to access. So it's tough. What we try to do is we check across multiple tools and try to come up with an average to figure out what it's actually going to be. And then, from there, we'll start getting the initial sales for them, and then kind of project where we think we're going to be based on what we've seen from the research tools and what we're actually seeing on the sales side.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So if somebody wanted to learn more from you, where would they go?
The best way to learn more is go to our website, amzadvisors.com. But the easiest way to get in touch with me is just directly at my email, mike@amzadvisors.com. I'm glad to answer any questions you have about Amazon, about Mexico, about Sears, if you want to learn any more. Exactly. But anything you want to know, just feel free to shoot me an email anytime.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
No problem. Thank you, Kevin.